there just really isn't time for this kind of luxury, of queen b7. And actually it sets black up for problems because he's trying to get some kind of counterplay against the e4 pawn with his own queen, but he ends up actually setting up tactics for Spassky, ironically, on this diagonal. It looks like he's preparing b4. It's just a little too slow. So Spassky beats him to the punch here. He plays f takes e, and then e5. And this is a beautiful move. Pinning the knight on c6 to the awkward queen on b7. And it's a pure positional pawn sacrifice to open lines and destroy black's structure. So there won't be any more beautiful knights on e5 in this position. You have to take with a pawn. D takes e5. And it's nothing special for white. There's no tactic, no immediate refutation of black's position. The next move is knight b3. Just that simple. He just plays knight b3. And kind of solidifying the position around his king while getting the file open for his rook, getting the e4 square for his pieces. And it's amazing. Spassky just simply sacrifices a pawn to give black a relatively useless double pawn, and he sort of fends off black's counterplay on the queen side while giving himself attacking chances. Tolush makes a reasonable move here, bishop e8. And, that avoids tactics against the bishop on d7, because bishop takes f6, followed by knight c5 might become a threat. I suppose that black could take on f6 with a pawn, but in any case, bishop e8 looks like a safe enough move. And now bishop d3. Immediate threats for Spassky now, starting to get some attacking chances, starting to get some threats like also of coming into e4 with the pieces. Maybe bishop takes f6 and bishop e4. So Tolush here, again, a controversial kind of idea coming up, you'll see. Bishop d3, Spassky just playing wizardly with his pieces. Rook b8. Again, Tolush a little slow. This just looks a little slow. Everything, yes, if we had all the time in the world, you're lining up the pieces in the right way, but it's Spassky, and he's ready to attack you, and you're just a little slow. Queen b7, rook b8. Queen h3 now with direct threats against the h7 point. And I think this is where the tide really starts to turn. Tolush is facing bishop takes f6, and it's basically lights out. So now he has to defend h7, and I guess he could play h6, but it looks a little dangerous, honestly. If h6, I don't know what Spassky would have done. Perhaps he would have just played something like bishop to e3 or bishop to c1, and then followed up with g5. That's probably the most likely continuation. Bishop c1 followed by g5. So black gives white a lever with the pawn advance g5. Instead, he plays bishop g6, which seems reasonable over the board. But look at the structure here that's resulting. Bishop takes g6, h takes g6. Spassky has created this in his opponent's camp. Two sets of isolated doubled pawns. It's not really a beautiful sight. And in the meantime, Tolush is just a move or two still away from creating threats against the white king. So h takes g6 and bishop takes f6. It's just practically winning almost here for white. Bishop takes f6. Now, if you take with the the g pawn on f6, it looks like it's probably just lost. Queen h6. No good way to protect g6, and I think the whole black position will just fall apart. So more or less, Tolush was forced to play bishop takes f6, which doesn't correct the structural problems. It gives access to this knight on c5. And again, we see Spassky with the two knights coordinating very well. So there's a pattern there, this Chigorin-esque play with the knights. But here's the second pawn move, the second pawn sacrifice, g5. Well, this is kind of obvious because, the e6 pawn is hanging. But it's not just about winning the e6 pawn. It's about creating open lines against the opponent's king. So it's just a complete wipeout after this. g5, bishop takes g5, and knight e4. One knight coming into c5, and now another knight threatens to come into d6, as well as menacing the white king. And the e6 pawn is falling as well. So Tolush, not only with a bad bishop here, he's 2 pawns up, but he's totally lost. So knight e4, bishop h6. I mean, I guess anything else was almost game over. Queen takes e6 check with the bishop on f6 or bishop on e7 doesn't look good. So bishop h6, giving his king a little cubby hole. And then knight c5. Almost no good squares for the queen. I thought the queen b6, but instead queen a7. And then rook d7. And it looks like this is basically game over because we have the threat of, almost we have queen takes h6, but that's only, actually that is a mate. He is threatening queen takes h6. If something like queen a8, yes, queen takes h6 would be the refutation. Pawn takes h6, knight f6 check, king h8, rook h7, Arabian mate, or we could also look at king f8 and this knight takes e6. So it's kind of a shame that, in fact, Tolush didn't allow this. It's beautiful, sort of double knight mate, double knight Arabian mate. Instead, he played the more logical defense here, rook c7, and I don't know, white doesn't have anything better than the mundane queen takes e6 check. Only move king h8 or h7. And here, Spassky, of course, just as good tactically as positionally, executes the simple win of a piece. Queen takes c6, and Tolush resigned. So this illustrates several things. You know, that probably Tolush shouldn't play the Najdorf against a player like Spassky. The Najdorf is an opening that is really requiring a very, very sharp play by black. You know, you're playing an opening where you're creating a double-edged position, and you're a move behind white from the beginning. So anytime you play the Sicilian, especially in the Najdorf, black has to play very dynamically. And I think that Tolush just took too much time with this slow, utopian plan of bishop d7, queen b7, rook b8, you know, when maybe he could have tried something like b4 a little earlier to get some kind of active counterplay going. And maybe that wasn't even enough. I think in the opening, bishop d7, the whole setup with bishop d7, playing it like a Scheveningen, just a little too slow. So Spassky, again, successful here, as he was many times against the Sicilian. Hopefully, later in the series, we'll see some other games where Spassky's also playing d4 as well. So stay tuned for those and upcoming part 3 and part 4. So thanks for tuning here at chesslecture.com. This was International Master William Paschall again for part 2 of Spastacular Attacking Miniatures. Bye-bye.